Paul's other letters. The goal here is to be able to trace ideas across more than one letter. So for instance, in the case of Corinthians, Paul speaks about Christ being the second Adam in 1 Corinthians 15. And he uses a lot of Adamic imagery for Christ in 2 Corinthians. So that's our point of departure in 2 Corinthians and 1 Corinthians for a lecture summarizing Paul's new Adam Christology. Likewise with Galatians, this is the chance to introduce the new perspectives on Paul, because those are especially related to the study of Galatians. And I try to introducing the topic of the new perspectives on Paul to the study of Galatians by showing what difference it makes for how you read certain passages in Galatians. And then finally with Romans, we have a quick summary of the Epistle to the Romans, but then in some ways I move away from conceptual issues and back to where we started, which is with Paul's activity, that is Paul's collection for the saints in Jerusalem, which ultimately can't be divorced from his theology. And you'll see why when you look at that lecture. I won't try to summarize the lecture here. So for the most part, what you get is on Corinthians, Galatians, and Romans, a relatively short introductory lecture. It's a little longer in the case of 1st and 2nd Corinthians because there's too much to summarize, with a medium length thematic lecture, which is connected to the relevant corpus. New Adam with Corinthians, new perspectives on Paul with Galatians, and Paul's collection, which is something he talks about in all of his letters, connected with Romans. I don't think in the end this adds that much to the sort of minutes of lecture that you've got before you, but it might be a tick more, and I hope that's not burdensome for anyone. And I think there are some things about Paul that are just so confusing that I kind of wanted to err on the side of offering a little more guidance. This is an area where Ehrman's textbook is good, but with all due respect, and I know Bart and I'm friends with Bart, but he gets a little out of his depth when it comes to Paul and some of the nuances there. There's one more thing I have to say. I've left the hard part for the end. There's also an extra lecture on Paul and the law. So here I have cheated. I've given you a little too much lecture material. Mea maxima culpa, forgive me. I'll try to keep subsequent lectures on Colossians and the pastorals and so on. Keep them tidy and to a limited length, because I don't want you to have to be sitting in front of your computers too much listening to me drone on. But again, the topic of Paul and the law is terribly confusing and I think deeply misunderstood. The lecture won't clear up all the confusion, but I think it will show in a helpful, I hope helpful way, what Paul definitely affirms about the law and believers in Christ, and wherein the confusing details lie, so that you can make that distinction and say, okay, clear, clear, clear conviction. The problem is, how does this conviction relate to that conviction? That sort of thing. I hope this works. This is the first time I've ever taught this unit, and so sort of creating lectures as we go and thinking about how we'll break down the weeks and topics. I think combining Ehrman's textbook and these lectures, plus your reading of Paul's letters, over the next 3 weeks, you'll get a nice introduction to Paul, a complex and important figure. Thank you.